So you're 8 weeks pregnant. Now what? Well, hopefully by now you've figured out your morning sickness a little bit better. It might be getting a little bit better anyway. Either you figured out how to deal with it, or you're just feeling a little bit better as your pregnancy continues. Most women have that morning sickness until about week 12 or up to 15 weeks. Sometimes even up to 20 weeks, you won't feel all that great all the time. If you're keeping up those small meals throughout the day, that'll help keep the food in your stomach. Your overall desire for food has probably increased by now. You're probably getting kind of hungry. For myself, around 10 o'clock, I want another meal. And then around 2, I want something of substance as well. So I'm keeping up those small meals to help keep myself from feeling nauseous. And then I'm just having to increase how much food I'm eating throughout the day as well. Hopefully the foods that you're eating aren't making you feel too sick. It is surprising. One day you'll eat something and that is great, and that's something that feels fine on your stomach and doesn't make you feel nauseous. And the next day you'll have the exact same meal and it will make you feel very ill. So the best way to deal with that is probably to then find something that will help alleviate that nauseous feeling in your stomach. So a carbonated drink, like a ginger drink. I have found that a little bit of coffee, for some reason, a couple sips of that definitely helps. Black tea. Sometimes you can find something that will just help your stomach feel a little bit better. You're probably also really exhausted now. Exhaustion is a huge part of first trimester. It gets a lot better by second trimester. So if you are just feeling like you are spending the whole day laying around, even though you just have a very tiny baby in your belly, know that you're not alone. Most women are pretty exhausted first trimester. For myself, with my pregnancy right before this, every single morning from about week 6 to about week 12, I was completely exhausted. My husband was working a lot. I have small kids. So I would get up in the morning and get them a bowl of cereal and put on Paw Patrol DVD and lay on the couch lethargically. I'm not usually big on screen time, but this is definitely a time in your life to take care of yourself. So letting some of those things go is okay. If you need to put on a little bit of screen time for the younger kids so that you can take care of yourself and rest, or find a meal that's going to make you feel okay, don't feel guilty about this. This stage does not last forever. That exhaustion should decrease soon. So with this pregnancy, I am so tired about 1 to 2 days a week. So I'm fine. Most mornings I've gotten up just fine, and most days I'm fine, but there is usually a day or 2 days during the week when I am completely exhausted. So I just have to lay low and take it very easy on those days and rearrange my schedule a bit and change things up, do things a little bit differently just to allow myself to rest on those days. It's also a couple of days that I feel great in the morning. I get up and then around 10 o'clock or so, I am just completely done and I have to lay down for a little rest, take a little breather for myself. So if that's you, know that you're not alone. This is a time when you can just research a lot of the things that you're going to be eventually doing for babies, things you're going to buy, more about childbirth. Just relax and look up a lot of that stuff. Next trimester is the shopping trimester. Most women feel great the second trimester. That is a great time. That is definitely the best time of pregnancy. So your first trimester, you're kind of exhausted, just tired. Second trimester, usually feel great. So you can buy the baby furniture, you can figure out what car seat you want, pick out the baby clothes, figure out which diapers you're going to use. You can figure out all that stuff in store, shopping around second trimester, and prepare that baby room, get everything ready. Third trimester, I'll just warn you, especially the last 8 weeks or so, you are so physically exhausted from carrying baby around, and also you're very mentally done, emotionally done. It is a lot on your body to carry around the baby. You just feel kind of at your max capacity of what you can handle, sensory wise, emotionally, physically, mentally. You're very irritable. It's very difficult. Those last 6 to 8 weeks are hard. So be prepared that that's how it's going to be, and don't save things to last minute. Of course, you could go get something done at that time, but you are not going to be your optimal self. And you are definitely not as nice as usual. So your husband might get the short end of the stick a couple times. Your kids might a couple times. That is a difficult time period. I think that is probably one of the most difficult things, is those last 6 to 8 weeks are just very difficult. And you're a bit, worried and stressed and neurotic with the whole pregnancy thing. So just know that's going to come towards the end. So get a lot done during second trimester. A lot of women will wait till 12 weeks and then they feel comfortable buying what they need, preparing for baby, getting all of their things. Other women will wait till 20 weeks. They've seen the ultrasound. They're really excited. Baby's getting bigger. This is real. Let's do this. And then they'll start getting what they need. I would really encourage you to go ahead and get your furniture set up and your baby crib put together, probably during second trimester, or make sure that that person who is going to help you do all that does it before you get too far along. Because as you go further along, your desire for nesting is just going to increase. And you're going to want that done so bad. And if you're waiting until the last 6 to 8 weeks, you're not going to be very nice about all that waiting time that you've had to get this crib put together or to get this room put together. So go ahead, and I would prepare a lot of that during the second trimester. That would be the best optimal time. For myself, with my first baby, so before I had kids and while I was pregnant with my first, I worked as an early interventionist in early child development. I would go into homes and visit with families who had had a child that had some sort of delay or diagnosis that might cause a delay in development. So you might have a late talker or a late walker or a baby that was born with a medical condition that would cause a delay, for example, like Down syndrome, or they were born with a cleft palate, clubbed feet, heart condition that might cause them to be more exhausted, preemies. So I worked with a lot of those kids. And I knew that 24 weeks is the earliest a baby is viable outside the womb. There's been a couple 23-weekers, but it's rare. So by 24 weeks, if you go into labor, that baby is good to go outside the womb. So for my first, I worked with a lot of preemies, and I was like, all right, I want this room set up by 24 weeks. So my little baby room was all prepared by 24 weeks just in case. And that was just me. I'd seen a lot and I knew what could potentially happen. I did not go early. I went to 39 weeks and I think 3 days. So that went really well because you never quite know with your first exactly what your body is going to do. That's just a thought for you with getting your room prepared. So let's talk about these food cravings. I hope you're having kind of fun with the food cravings. I am loving the pickles. I'm loving the sour cream and onion potato chips. I even want a chip dip, which I have not had since like a slumber party when I was 10, but chip dip was pretty good. Sweets, I kind of want, sometimes I kind of don't. Doing pretty good during the day, eating pretty healthy. I can't take a salad right now, I don't know why, but I have made some good soups that I'm eating, and then I'm making sure my other foods during the day are generally pretty healthy. When my husband gets home in the evening while dinner is cooking or after we've had dinner and the kids are somewhat settled, I go out and I get my food cravings and I splurge a little bit on myself. Food cravings are kind of fun. They're kind of like you're walking around the corner store and you're like, Laffy Taffy, that looks good. You feel like you're 12 again. Have fun with your food cravings. You can definitely indulge a bit, all things in moderation. So make sure you're not eating a gallon of ice cream every day. But that's always fun, and it's always a fun part of pregnancy. Just know that these food cravings come and go. So what you definitely want this week or even today might change tomorrow. So don't buy the huge jar of pickles unless there's somebody else in the house who's happy to eat all those pickles. I remember my brother talking about his wife with their first. He did a lot of the shopping, and she was not feeling well. So he bought a lot of her favorites. And then she went off foods constantly. Something she really loved one day or 1 week, and then she did not want to touch it or even have it being prepared when she was around the next week. So towards the end of the pregnancy, he said, I am eating everything in the house that she no longer wants to eat or be around. And that was part of his suffering during pregnancy, was eating all these foods that were her favorite at one time. So buy things in small quantities because you're definitely going to love it one day and not the next, or love it for a week and then not even be able to go near it during the next week. I definitely couldn't cook ground beef or mince for about 2 weeks. It smelled so bad. I even bought different types, like different brands, and it just smelled awful. I remember a good friend not being able to cook or be around raw chicken at all during her pregnancy with her first. She was able to go to a restaurant and buy chicken and eat it, or get a rotisserie chicken. That was okay, but she could not be around the raw chicken or cook or prepare it. So it definitely changed up their family meals a bit. At that time, it was just her and her husband. It's her first, but he had a lot of different things coming his way, or she just had a really hard time cooking in general. So be aware that that's normal stuff, and that's every woman who's pregnant deals with a lot of that. So your 8 weeks, there is a test that can be done 8 or 9 weeks to determine the gender of your baby. They also, a lot of times, will do just a general, they'll check your blood and see if there's any chromosomal abnormalities with the baby or any concerns there. Just know that these are not 100% conclusive. They might even do an early ultrasound, and there might be a concern. Some women want to know that very early on. Some women don't. It's a lot of stress. If you find out there might be a concern with the baby, or the baby might end up having some sort of disability or maybe a possible birth defect, that is a huge stressor throughout your pregnancy. I, for one, would rather know at birth. Pregnancy is hard enough to worry and stress about that. There are some things that are helpful to know they could possibly do a little bit in utero. One is spina bifida. That'll probably come up on a 20-week ultrasound though. Sometimes spina bifida can be worked on in utero, and it is helpful, but the child still does have the results of spina bifida after being born. They're not just because they've done the surgery in utero, which is helpful. It might help a little bit with the further development of the baby. You can look up spina bifida if you want. Not very common. 90% of all children are born happy and healthy. So that leaves about 10% that have some sort of birth defect or disability or chromosomal abnormality. Out of those 10%, 1% to sometimes 2% will actually need services. The services that I used to do before I had kids. It's called early child development, birth to 3, infant development program. Sometimes it's called Watch Me Grow. Every single city and county in America offers early intervention services. A pediatrician always knows who in your area offers that. You can Google it and look it up. It has slightly different names. There's different names for the program in every city or county, but that's available. It's a great program. So it's a program where if there is a concern with your child, you can call them up and state your concern yourself. Your mother-in-law can call them up. Your doctor, anybody can. They can make a referral. They'll call you up and talk to you. If they feel like, yep, this might be a worry or concern, they'll come out and do a simple little questionnaire and just talk and chat and do a first initial visit. And they'll see from there if they feel like you need a full evaluation of your child. And if so, you will have usually, like let's say there's concerns the child's not walking yet. So you'd have a physical therapist come in and an early interventionist come in, or early child developmental specialist, and they would just do a basic evaluation of the child and see if they're delayed a certain percentage. So a 25% delay. So if the child is 12 months old, but they have the skills of a 6-month-old, that's a 50% delay. So then they will qualify for services and they can offer you physical therapy right in your home. It's awesome. So that's just something that's available. All right, let's go back to these chromosomal tests. So I've worked with a lot of families. Some have been told in utero, there's a concern with your child, and then there was nothing wrong. That definitely happens. Some women are really worried. Something's not developing or going well, and then baby is born and everything's fine. That's a possibility. There's also a possibility you're told there's a concern, we're not sure what it is, but it's not X, Y, or Z, and then baby is born with X, Y, or Z. So they don't know everything. They know a little bit, they can figure out a little bit, but it's generally not 100% conclusive. Sometimes they will figure out, yeah, I think your baby has Down syndrome. And then when your baby's born, they will know, all right, maybe your baby might need a heart surgery, maybe they don't, maybe we just know that they'll be delayed a bit in their development. There's actually different levels of Down syndrome. So some people with Down syndrome do awesome cognitively, they have great skills. It's difficult to tell that they even have much of a delay there. And other kids struggle a bit more. If that's something that happens in your life, just don't stress out too much. I generally don't like the first ultrasound or those first tests. I don't want to be scared yet. I always get the 20-week ultrasound. I think that's great. I think for myself, one reason that's a good reason to have the 20-week ultrasound is with one of my kids. I went in for the 20-week ultrasound, and when they were looking at everything. They were like, oh, your baby has attached really close to the birth canal. And if it's actually covering the birth canal, then you're not going to be able to deliver this baby vaginally. You're going to have a C-section. They said, towards the end of your pregnancy, we'll check again. And if baby has moved and grown up and away from the birth canal, then you'll be able to have a natural delivery and labor. If not, we'll have to schedule you for a C-section. And I said, that sounds great. Good to know. When I was working with a midwife and a doctor at that time, when my midwife looked at my stuff, she was a little worried. And then she read closer and read more and said, okay, this baby has attached right beside the birth canal, but is not over top. So you should be okay, but we'll see. So when I got to, I think I was about 36 or 37 weeks, they waited a while. They checked again, and yep, baby had grown and moved up and away. So I was fine to have natural labor and delivery. But that was a good reason to have an ultrasound. I didn't even know that was a thing that could happen. Of course, obstetricians and family doctor and your midwife will know all that stuff. So when you're looking at having your baby, one thing you really want to avoid is an induction. I've had so many friends and so many families I've worked with that have had an induction and then results are not what they wanted. One way to really avoid an induction is to be very aware of when baby was conceived. If you feel like you know your body and your cycle really well, try hard to stick with your dates and try hard to say, I want to go with my dates. Okay, let me show you something. So this is, see that first top one? This is a typical, so this is a charting of a typical month of having your period and your cycle up and down. There were, 5 days of a period. Then there were a couple days when there was no cervical mucus. So this person knew, so you have your period. They had a couple days when they could not conceive. You would not get pregnant this time. Then they started noticing there was cervical mucus. So there's lots of different methods to figure out when you are fertile, when you ovulate in your cycle. This is called the Cravings method. So all you do is when you're going to the bathroom, you wipe before you go to the bathroom, you look at the toilet tissue, and then after you go to the bathroom, you wipe again and look at the toilet tissue. As you start to ovulate, your cervical mucus will come in. So cervical mucus looks like egg yolk. No, egg white. You know that like the before it's cooked, just the very clear, stretchy egg white. That is just what cervical mucus looks like. So it can be really confused with seminal fluid, semen as well. So when you're figuring it out, you gotta be careful of that. But so this person noticed they wiped every time they went to the bathroom, before they went to the bathroom and after, before and after a shower, before and after going to the pool. And they noticed there was a bit of what looked like egg white on their toilet tissue. And so they marked. So this one, let me see. Let's see. So they just noticed a very small bit. And then as they went, they noticed more and more. So you might notice it once on your toilet tissue. You might notice it twice during the day. If you notice it more than 3 times and there's a lot, that means that you are about to ovulate. So this person noticed they were about to ovulate. There was a lot of that cervical mucus. And then here they ended up ovulating. So there was a ton of cervical mucus this day. So they had AD all day. Most times they wiped, which you put AD if it's more than 3 times. So most of the times they wiped during the day, they noticed what looked like a lot of egg white. And then, so that was the day that they ovulated. The next day there was just a little bit. And then the next 2 days there actually wasn't any. Yep, wasn't any. So that was the day that they ovulated. And then, so they could conceive, technically, from when the white babies are put on to the last green baby. So after you've had you're a lot of cervical mucus, and that's the last day that you had a lot, then you go 1, 2, 3 days, and then the evening of that third day will be the last time that you can conceive, and then the next day you're okay. So the fourth day passed, you're fine. You won't conceive after that. So then this person had a 28-day cycle. They just went. This was not a time when they can conceive these greens. So if you think about it, one way it's been described very easily is if you're planting seeds in a field, if the field is dry, the dirt is just very dry, then the seeds will not implant and grow. If the field is moist and wet and you plant the seeds, then the seeds will grow. So it's the same with you and I. If when there's a lot of cervical mucus, that helps the seminal fluid or the semen move through your body to the egg. If that's not present, it can't get there. They need to move quick. You're not fertile for a very long time. So that is just a basic, this is a very typical one. Of course, there's differences. Stress, if you're stressed, there's one on here with stress. So I think it's this one. So they had a little bit of cervical mucus, and then they didn't really have any. And so they were starting to ovulate, but they are stressed. And so it's called a double peak. So then here it came back, and then they did eventually ovulate. That's not typical. Most women just have the normal 28-day one, and then that's when they ovulate and they're good to go. It very, very rarely, a woman might get seminal or get cervical mucus here and then ovulate right there. But it's really rare. Usually, most women, you'll have like a day or two here where you're not fertile, but not every woman. Some women will conceive right after their period. The next day, you can start your cervical mucus can start to come in. So some women who are using this to try to conceive or not to conceive, if they don't want a baby that month, they will not spend time with their husband during this time at all. Other women know that they have a day or two, that they're okay. So that is your cycle. That is how you conceive. So if you feel like you kind of know your body, like you know, I get a period every month, and it's like you can look back and count. Yep, it's usually every 28 days. Or you know what? It's usually every 30 days. And I know this was the time of my first day of my last period. On all the charts online that you go on to, you can change the number of days. So let's say you have a 30-day cycle usually. You can change it from 28 to 30. Some women even know, I definitely know this is when I ovulated. And so I definitely know this is when I conceived. Knowing that is awesome. If you had a crazy month and you really do not know when you conceived, it was just too much going on, you didn't pay attention to when your period came, and you can't look back at previous months and kind of figure out your cycle and say, you know what, let me count. Okay, I usually do 30 days. It probably was around this time that my period started. If you can't figure that out at all, then I would pay attention to a dating ultrasound. So you have a dating scan, a dating ultrasound that can be done. And they just measure the length of the baby. That's how they determine how far along you are. And there is controversy over whether 8 weeks is the best time to figure that out. 12 weeks is the best time to figure that out. There is controversy there. Most will say after 12 weeks, it's not as good to use because we're all different. Babies are born at different sizes, and you and I are different sizes, and our husbands are different. You might have a really tall husband, you have a really short. So they simply take the length of the baby, and that's how they determined how far along you are. It is not always perfect science. So if you are very sure of your own dates, I would stick with those. Now, if you're offered a dating scan and you are sure of your dates, you might want to consider declining it, or you might want to consider asking, if this scan is very different than my own dates, which will you use? You should be offered to use your own dates or the one from the ultrasound, but some medical offices will only use the ultrasound dates, and they will completely ignore you and your dates. So just be aware of that. So here's the problem. Here's what happens. And I've had this happen to a lot of friends and a lot of families I worked with. I feel like it can be really dangerous from what I've seen. So let's say that I know when I conceived, I know when my period is, and from my own days, my own calculations, I am due July 15th. So I go in, I get a dating ultrasound, and they say, you're 2 weeks further along than you thought. So we're going to move your due date. You're actually due July 2nd. And so, that sounds good to me. I'm only 8 or 9 weeks along. Sure, I'm happy to be further along. That means baby's coming quicker. Okay, what happens when you get to that time? What happens when you get to July 2nd? So now you're considered 40 weeks, and baby is going to have to be born now or a couple days, or we're going to induce you. And from your dates, you're really only actually 38 weeks. Baby, a lot of times, I've had this happen to so many friends. So baby isn't even engaged into the pelvis. Baby is still floating up high. They haven't even dropped. They really have no other signs that baby is coming soon. But because their dates were changed, now they have a due date. And yep, you're 40 weeks. Most places will only let you go a few days over that. Very rarely will they let you go to 41 weeks. Some will let you go to 42, but it is very difficult to go to 42. And I don't know anybody that'll let you go past 42 weeks. So just realize now, when you're 8 weeks, what's being offered to you and what it can look like in the future. I would say for the most part, if they say you're not as far along as you think and they put you back a week, that probably shouldn't affect you too much. So if you're, let's say I know July 15th, but they're saying July 20th, most people are considered full term after 36 weeks. I think it's 36 weeks. I said 37. I'll have to look it up again. Forget as you go. It wouldn't be considered preemie. So that's not as big of a deal. But if you're told you're further along than you think, you conceived right at your period, that's 2 weeks difference. When you get to then the new date of 40 weeks, if you're induced and you're not really ready, it usually doesn't go very well. That's when a lot of women struggle with the outcome, or they struggle with the decisions that were made. So they didn't really feel like they were ready. Baby wasn't really engaged. They weren't dilated any. They didn't really have that many Braxton Hicks. But their dating ultrasound said they were so far along, so their dating scan. So now they're at 40 weeks. They'll let you go 40 weeks, 3 days. You're induced. Your body doesn't always then go into labor. You're trying. It doesn't work. They try more things to help baby come along. Baby's not really responding. Body isn't really working. Eventually give you Pitocin. So Pitocin is meant to maybe have a little bit of contraction, makes your contractions quicker and closer together. It can be helpful for some women. Usually when Pitocin is given, since your contractions are quicker and closer together, baby gets into distress pretty quick because they don't get the same amount of time to rest and breathe. So you've got quick, closer together contractions. Baby's not getting the time to breathe. Heart rate drops. Baby's in distress, and then a C-section will take place. I don't think a C-section is the worst thing in the world. My husband was delivered by a C-section. I'm very thankful that he is alive and well. I'm thankful that they made that decision for his mom and for him. I'm thankful that they made the decision quickly, and it was something that was done, and he was not in there too long. He was not under distress. He did not have lack of oxygen, and he came out happy and healthy. Him and his mom were fine. I'm glad that happened. That was something that was needed in his case, and I'm glad they had a C-section. It's an awesome thing. If you need a C-section, you want a C-section. If they've determined that's what needs to be done, then you really want it to be done, and you want it to be done quick before baby gets in distress. That being said, so many women I know have been induced because their dates have been changed, and they didn't really feel like they were ready, and then baby didn't really come, and then they end up with a C-section they weren't happy with. They don't feel like it all should have happened that way. So try to avoid an induction and just be aware of changing your dates. If you really don't know and you're really confused, sure, go with the dating scan, see what they say, and if that does well with you, then fine. If you really the dating scan is not resonating well with you, the dates are very different than yours, you really know you did not spend time with anybody during that time, you definitely weren't ovulating during that time, it didn't work, and your health care professional won't really listen to you or let you change them to what you want, you might want to go work with someone else. Usually midwives will let you use your own dates. I have been asked once, I think there was 2 days difference, and they said, do you want to use our dates or your dates? And I said, mine, please. And they said, that's fine. That was actually at a 20-week ultrasound. So at a 20-week ultrasound, they will say, okay, we think baby's this far along. My mom always had her kids a little bit late, so I was really worried that would happen to me, but it actually hasn't happened to me. Mine have usually come a few days early, and it's okay. I just want you to be aware with that, with the dating scan, of what it can look like in the future. I know some women have their dates changed 3 or 4 times throughout their pregnancy. It all seems like a bit much. Be careful too of just being induced early because they think baby's pretty far along and everything's looking good and there's no real concern or worry. So I did work with a mom, this was about 8 years ago, and she, throughout pregnancy, they changed her dates a few times. They decided to induce her, even though there was no real concern. They felt like baby was big enough, far enough along, everything was looking good. Let's induce you a bit early, baby looks great. And so she went in, she was induced, she had baby, and baby was born with the little hairs still all over her. They were shocked how small baby was and how early baby was. They had induced her to deliver a preemie, totally unnecessarily. And baby, I then ended up working with her. She did not do very well. She struggled then developmentally. She was a bit behind. It was just overall a really bad decision. And they felt like baby was so big and baby had developed so well and baby was doing fine. Let's go ahead and induce her and have her. And it was a really bad idea. So be careful of that too. If there's a concern, you're not doing well, you're diabetic, baby needs to come, of course, have baby. But if there's really no concern, I know March for Dimes is really big on keeping baby inside as long as you can. And they're really big on not having baby early if you don't need to. So just be aware of that too, not to tell you scary stories, but it happens. So I mentioned the chromosome test you can do at this time. You can also do a gender test. So what they do is they simply look for testosterone in mom's blood. And if there's testosterone present in mom's blood, it generally means you're pregnant with a boy. If there isn't, then you're pregnant with a girl. It's about 99% accurate. I do know a mom that was told boy, and at her 20-week ultrasound, she was told girl, and then girl was born. So what she figured must have happened was she must have had twins, vanishing twin syndrome. So maybe you were pregnant with 2 and then one just didn't keep developing and then just kind of disappeared. So she thought maybe that was what had happened. But usually they're pretty accurate early on. They'll just see if there's testosterone in your blood, and if there is, it's boy, and if not, it's girl. So that's always something fun to figure out early if you want to know the gender. If you don't, then don't ask them to tell you at all, and don't ask them to look themselves in case it slips.